We're in front of the Israeli School, Universal Practical Knowledge, the Philadelphia Division, here at 3226 Cheltenham Avenue in Philadelphia. We're standing in front of the school right now, getting a description of the 12 tribe sign that's been painted by one of the brothers that was in the school: Judah, Benjamin, Levi, Simeon, Zebulun, Ephraim, Manasseh, Gad, Reuben, Naphtali, Asher, Issachar. Those are the 12 tribes of Israel.
Shalom. Shalom. You've been waiting for this day, so this day has finally come. A lot of you have been wondering where this knowledge that you've been hearing is coming from, and the powerful truth that you've been hearing, how this was established. Well, we finally were able to arrange for the priests to come down from New York and spend some time with us. And I'd like to introduce them if I can. These are some great brothers. We're very glad to have them with us. We want to make them feel as warm as possible, because this is their work and the extension of their work and what they've laid down some time ago. I'd like to introduce, first of all, priest and Sixth Shield General, fourth in command in the nation of Israel, Lahab. I'd like to salute this brother, Majo. Barak. Yeshabim, which means sit. And I'm going to turn it over now to Priest General Lahab.
Water, brother. I'd like to say this, starting off, we're very impressed at your school here, and we're very impressed to see that the brothers and sisters in Philadelphia think enough of the Most High and the Bible and the truth and your nationality to be a part of this, because most of the brothers and sisters are running from the truth.
All right, sound check. Sound check. Okay, sound is Tawab. All right, what's going on, Israel? Yahweh Shem Yahushua Barak a thumb to the brothers. Yahweh Shamar Alatham Bashim Yahushua to the sisters. Priest and officer of 1,000 Shar Yawan, under commanding General Yohana. All right, we have the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. Started out of 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York. All right, Salakia. My allergies kicking in a little bit. But we good to rock out. It's another Monday night history class. Thawada for everybody tuning in. Shout out to Wanda Williams. Shout out sis Yahweh Shamar Alatham by Shem Yahushai. It's like Yahweh Shamar Alatham by Shem Yahushai. Yep, to the sisters. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. All right, share the classes. Comment anything. Help get the algorithm up. All right, that way we can push this truth and get out of this captivity. Okay, so Monday night history class we're going to get into tonight We're going to touch on some information on all these water, boiled water advisories that we keep seeing continually go on inside of Canada. Of course, it's a history class, so we're going to touch a little on the history. We're going to get into a little bit of what's going on today and break down the solution, the only and real solution to these these poor living conditions on the reserves. Okay, because not having clean water on our indigenous reserves, is only one small part of a problem. And it's sad because that is a major problem. It is a major issue for Native Indians inside of Canada. All right, it's a problem for our people all over the earth. And one of the big things that I'm damn near making new business for myself here in Canada is to help bridge the gap between Blacks and Hispanics and Indigenous. Okay, we are brothers all going through the same shit inside of Canada. Okay, inside of North and South Central America, inside of the Caribbean islands, inside of the UK. All of us are going through the same thing. Okay, and like the Bible says in the book of Zephaniah chapter 2 and verse 1, it says, "Gather yourselves together, O nation not desired." And what does that mean? It should not be, new news or something that surprises you that Blacks, Hispanics, and Indigenous are a people that are undesired in this entire earth. We are at the bottom of society everywhere you go on this earth. You know what I mean? I remember doing a story on the Jamaicans, who went out to follow Haile Selassie. They move out to Ethiopia and they get put at the bottom of society inside of goddamn Africa, inside of a place that the world would believe is, damn near the scum of the earth, has the worst living conditions. You know what I mean? Think of all those, those teleprompt commercials that we seen growing up in today about, the Africans with flies over their bodies and how malnourished the Africans are and this and that. Meanwhile, Jamaicans went in Ethiopia and they were put on the bottom of society inside of Africa. That's how much of a undesirable people we are. You know what I mean? That verse is so heavy. Gather yourselves together, O nation not desired. You know what I mean? You go to a third world country and you're still put on the bottom of society. You know what I mean? And it should be even more of a slap in the face to be Black, Hispanic, or Indigenous inside of a goddamn first world country and living like you're in a third world, which is exactly what Blacks, Hispanics, and Indigenous go through, living in every goddamn ghetto, barrio, and reservation on this earth. You know what I mean? I could damn near better understand the Jamaicans who went to Ethiopia living in poor living conditions because they're in a third world country. You know what I mean? But to be Indigenous inside of Canada, where we got these great treasure cities, like the Bible would say, like Toronto. Toronto's the third largest city inside of North America. And inside of this place, you can't get Indigenous people, First Nations people, Native Indian people, some goddamn clean drinking water. Zephaniah 2 and 1 says, "Gather yourselves together, O nation not desired." I remember the story going out in Flint, Michigan, of the Black people inside the ghettos of Flint, Michigan. They can't get no goddamn clean drinking water. It's no different than the reserve inside of Canada, than the reserves inside of America. You can be Native Indian anywhere on this earth, and you are not going to get clean drinking water. You could be black anywhere on this God green earth. You are not going to get clean drinking water because you are a undesirable people. Jamaica just hit with, another earthquake. How many times Haiti hit with earthquakes and, what I mean, these hurricanes that destroy the land because these damn people that are over us continually oppress us and put us in environments where we can't succeed. I remember reading something on there's this First Nations a reserve inside of Canada that is one of the most richest places on earth of minerals, you know what I mean, different natural resources, and yet they're one of the worst places on earth to live. We got to really listen and pay attention because you're on a First Nations reserve in Canada with some of the most richest minerals on earth on your reserve inside of Canada, yet you are the most impoverished. If you're a Haitian brother in Haiti, you should hear that story and say, wait a minute, you're telling me the First Nations Reserve in Canada has all this gold and, minerals and all this wealth, yet they're living in, third world conditions. Well, guess what, Haitian man? You and the native Indian inside of Canada are brothers. Not only are you brothers and sisters and family, you are going through the same thing on the reserve in Canada that you do in Haiti. You're in Jamaica, just hit last week with an earthquake. You're going through the same thing in Jamaica as they are in Flint, Michigan, and Detroit. Can't get clean water and good services inside of Detroit. It's the same goddamn thing on reserves. It's the same goddamn thing in barrios. We are all a undesirable people. That's why it's so important that we listen to the Most High God of Israel and gather together. You know what I mean? Shout out to Ka'ar in the chat. Yabba Shimmer Shabraka Thumb Priest. He says Venezuela as well. Look, man, you are, if you are descendants of the 12 tribes of Israel, no matter where you are going through the same things. And if we don't gather together, then we are never going to fix these solutions inside of our neighborhoods. You know what I mean? I got some videos I'll bring out and understand, like, we really have to gather together. It's something, you know what I mean, to our minds, because what we see in front of us, we may not understand the importance of these scriptures. We may not understand why God would say something like gather together. But just because we don't understand it doesn't mean it's not the solution. He said gather together for a reason. First of all, to understand that we're all a undesirable people on this earth. We have enemies. We have people that oppress us and hate us no matter where we are on this earth. It's sad that we can be on a reserve and not even know what's going on in the ghetto, of a black man in Jane and Finch area. We don't know about what's going on to a black man in Flint, Michigan. And in Flint, Michigan, 30 minutes down the road on a reserve, they ain't got no goddamn clean water either. They have poor housing over there just the same as we do over here. Imagine if we gathered together and said, wait a minute, we're all undesired. We're all a people that are hated by everybody that surrounds us. And maybe we could start coming together and say, wait a minute, we have the same goddamn enemy. The people that destroy your clean drinking water over here are destroying my clean drinking water over here. And maybe starting to bridge this gap between blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous, then we can start, building up our nation, building up our army, building up ways to better defend ourselves. I just saw a video yesterday where natives are out fighting the goddamn construction workers to stop them from putting, gas lines and pipes through their clean water, through their rivers, through the places where they get their water to live. They're fighting the construction workers, and they're out there by themselves, not knowing that we're all in this same, this same hell together. All right, so the Bible says, gather yourselves together. And that's only the beginning of the solution to what's going on in our neighborhoods. Okay, so I got some videos I'm going to share, some articles we're going to get into, and we're going to break this all down. All right.
A study on housing conditions in 4 isolated First Nations communities found
inadequate.
A study on housing conditions in 4 isolated First Nations communities found consistent respiratory illnesses in children under the age of 3 due to poor indoor air quality. Researchers conditions in 4 isolated First Nations communities found consistent respiratory illnesses.
So what does these devils love to do? They love to research us. You know what I mean? They love to treat us like little pets. You know what I mean? Which is why sometimes I don't like sharing these videos showing the conditions of our people. You know what I mean? We damn near a laughing stock in this earth. And what we should understand is that in seeing these videos, this isn't something to be ashamed of. We shouldn't be ashamed of our living conditions. What we need to do as a people is have compassion on each other and understand that we're being oppressed by the same goddamn enemy.
In children under the age of 3 due to poor indoor air quality. Researchers analyzed factors affecting respiratory health in 4 First Nations communities in the Sioux Lookout region in northern Ontario. High levels of mold in interior surfaces, high levels of endotoxin, a residue of certain bacteria usually associated with wheezing was found. Dr. Tom Kavesi, pediatric respirologist and physician at Ottawa's Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, was the lead researcher on the project. He says the study showcases extremely poor living conditions.
These are really small, crowded houses. The average occupancy in these little houses was 6.6 people per house. And these houses had significant amounts of damage.
The study took about...
So now you have this researcher is saying that, we're going to get into this some more. You have children that are ages 1 to 3, where they're saying, I believe the number was 27% of children being born inside of these reserves are all being taken to hospitals for respiratory issues because of how poor living conditions that they're living in. These houses on the reserve, they have, what's it called? Poor insulation, poor infrastructure. You have this area where there's snow everywhere, moisture's getting in, water's getting in, rain's getting in, and it's damaging the houses that they're living in. So much so that the mold growing from these living conditions is causing 27% of babies being born into this to be rushed to the hospital for respiratory issues. This is a problem, Black man. This is a problem, Hispanic man, Indigenous man. These are national emergencies, state emergencies that we need to resolve inside of our communities.
5 years of planning and compiled data between 2019 and 2020 and included homes where 98 First Nations children aged 3 years or younger lived. It found 85% of homes lacked proper ventilation, 44% showed water penetration in exterior walls, more than half had damaged windows, and 6% of the houses had immediate danger.
You imagine that 85% of the homes are built so poorly, 85%, that the ventilation in the goddamn house can't protect the people living inside of them. One of the things we got to understand, black man, is Native Indians, they're living in what they call a reserve, what we would call the ghetto. You living in Jamaica inside of a hut somewhere, some tin house somewhere, you living in the ghetto the same way indigenous people are living on the reserve. Those barrios in Española, they are the same thing. We are a nation that is undesired. And our communities get no help, no funding, no love. They're constantly being put in situations, you know what I mean, to damn near self-destruct.
The study also showed nearly 40% of the children suffered wheezing and colds, which is a symptom of asthma. 21% of the children had been admitted to hospital during the first 2 years of their lives, and a quarter of them were medically evacuated due to respiratory illness.
So it gives a real reflection of just how much respiratory morbidity these kids were experiencing.
Daryl Schwader, youth advocate in Shamattawa First Nation in Manitoba, says this isn't a new issue.
There's not a lot of ventilation that's installed in these houses when they're built. Most of them don't even have ventilation. Because of that, there's been a lot of respiratory issues amongst kids.
Christopher Harper, cultural coordinator with Peguis Child Family Services in Manitoba, says these poor living conditions are detrimental to these young kids.
A lot of common colds and flu symptoms, and a lot of people overlook that, and they look at it as an illness and not something that could be hurting them in the future and essentially taking their life.
Anishinaabe Nation Grand Chief Derek Fox in Thunder Bay, Ontario, is calling on the federal government to take immediate action to this crisis. Quote, "We've been advocating for years for substantial improvements to housing, but the government keeps asking for proof that the moldy, drafty houses many of our members are forced to live in are connected to their poor health. This dedicated team has confirmed this link." Dr. Kovesi says it's important the government look at these findings.
We can drop that. Something that we should never do is look at how they're living and say, well, damn, what's wrong with that? That's how I grew up. You a black man who grew up in the ghetto, so that's just everyday life. Brothers on the reserve would say the same thing. It's just everyday life. That's how we grew up. Instead of looking at each other and having compassion, saying, God damn, we shouldn't be living like that. Our kids shouldn't be going through that. Our children shouldn't be raised up in, these ghettos where everybody's in danger of being harmed. You're a black, Hispanic, or indigenous man that didn't grow up in the ghetto. You should be looking at this saying, God damn, my people are suffering. I'm over here living good, and my people are down the street, living in absolute hell, living in high crime rates in an area that's impoverished. What do they say? The reason for high crime is, wealth, you know what I mean? Or poverty. The main reasons for crime is poverty, and my people are the most impoverished people on this planet. Of course, the crime rates are high. Canada did a study on the 12 worst places to live inside of Canada, and every goddamn place was on a reserve. If not on a reserve, right beside the reserve of where indigenous people are. Our people are suffering. We really have to learn to have compassion and start building up compassion for one another and say, my people are suffering everywhere on this earth. Not only are they suffering, but I want something better for my people. These are my brothers. These are my sisters. These are my cousins, my aunts, my uncles. All of us are suffering in this place. And we got to stop looking at each other like we're not brothers, like we're not family. We are all an undesirable people. That's what the Bible says. And as you start to study more of the history of where we come from, you say, wait a minute. These brothers are descendants of Jacob. This is the tribe of Ephraim. This is the tribe of Reuben. This is the tribe of Benjamin. We all can't come from the same man. We all come from the same family. You dive deeper in the Bible, you get through Deuteronomy 28, you start to find out, wait a minute, these are curses on my people for disobedience. These are curses on my people for living a certain way. And it has followed us everywhere on this earth. We got to have compassion on one another and say, we have to get out of this hell that our people are living in. We have to stop looking at each other like, oh, you're a rich man and I'm a poor man, and we don't have nothing to do with each other. We got to stop that as a people. You're a rich indigenous brother. You got to take care of the poor on the reserves. You're a rich black man in America. You got to take care of the ghettos inside of America. That's why you brothers who go out and, play these sports, make some money, and all of a sudden you want to leave the ghetto. You want to marry a white woman and give all your resources to another nation. You know how many family members you're leaving behind? Where is the compassion for your family? Where is the compassion for the brothers that you grew up with in the ghetto? Where's the compassion for the brother you grew up with on the reserve to say, damn, even though I got clean water, how am I going to forget about this man that don't got no clean water? Especially now that you got resources to, to fix the problem or help with the solution. You got goddamn, there's new technology where this water will convert, these machines will convert humidity in the air into potable water. You can buy a machine, put it in a house, and help the condition of your people. I see some of these, black men walking down the street saying, I am God. I'm a God. You got so much goddamn power. Get some clean water to a brother on a reserve. Get some clean water to a brother in Flint, Michigan. These people are suffering. All you need to buy this machine is $400. These things will make 2 gallons of water every day, drinking water. You're such a God, but you can't get that to a brother on a reserve, to a brother in a ghetto, a brother who's in need, a sister, a sister who's in need. Knowing that these conditions that they're in were not created by them. These conditions that we're in were created by a people that hate us. Created by a people that have a perpetual hatred for us. We're gonna get into more of that. I got another quick video we'll share. Get to the next one. This is a reserve in Canada that is known to be the worst reserve in all of Canada to live in. And we just gonna give, like I say, I'm not gonna tear down my people and show every nook and cranny of how they're living, but just to give a small example to help bridge the gap between blacks and indigenous, between Hispanics and blacks, where we can say, damn, we all going through the same thing.
Wajik, atapos kita hindoschin. Shagots got no apaskagits got there, but Matus got kaship the Shihia. What chick? At the apaskat the Hindustin. Shagots got no apaskagits got there, but Matus got kaship the Shihia Hapan. The place was originally called Kadawapiskat, that means path between rocks, very steep and very rocky, and it was also very abundant in traditional foods. Interestingly, this area is also rich in natural resources.
What did she say? Interestingly, that the worst reserve to live on in Canada, the worst ghetto for an indigenous brother to live inside of Canada, is rich and abundant in resources. How many times I've heard Haitian brothers say that, Haitian sisters say that. Haiti is rich in resources, abundant in resources. Jamaica, rich in resources, abundant in resources. Shadow Officer 500 Kaar, Venezuela, rich in resources, abundant in resources. Puerto Rico, rich in resources. Where's that one? Aporium. Who's that? Asher, out near Brazil. That land was known as what do they call it? Oh, what was that name for Aparium being fruitful? That land down there over in Brazil. Shoot, even the word Brazil, that word comes from Barzal, meaning land of iron, rich in iron. Jamaica or Jamaica, that the Taino Indians would call it, meaning land of wood and water. These lands are rich in resources. How much oil did they find out near Cuba? How much oil are they finding in the Caribbean islands? How much oil do they find in Alaska? How much oil do they find all throughout Canada, BC, and America? This place is a land rich and abundant in resources. But for some reason, your black ass in Haiti has to live impoverished. Your black ass in Trinidad, with all the resources it has to live in poverty. Mexico, all the oil that they're finding in Cuba, yet they live in poverty. Why is it that a place that is so self-sufficient in resources that the black man, Hispanic man, and indigenous man has to live in poverty? You have an earthquake that hits Venezuela, and we looking at it like, God damn, this whole place is gone to hell. Why? Because we were already impoverished. We don't got the money and the funds to handle another earthquake. Jamaica just has a major power outing and earthquake that hits and another hurricane that hits, and god damn, how do we live against all these natural disasters? Could you imagine what would happen to this place? This place that we're looking at right now, if an earthquake hit it? They already don't have clean drinking water. They already don't have housing, that is suitable for people to live in. Yet they got families of up to 13 people living inside of these small ass homes. They can't survive another Canadian snowstorm. They can't afford to go through, another ice storm inside of Canada. Imagine a tornado going through this place. We're looking at each other like we are fucked. We have no hope to stand against these natural disasters. Meanwhile, we have all this wealth. How does that make sense?
Which are now extracted by others.
And what does she say? All these natural resources that we have on this reservation are extracted by other people. It's extracted by Canadians. It's extracted by the Chinese. It's extracted by the East Indians. It's extracted by everybody but us. And we live here. Isn't that the same story of Jamaica? The same story of Haiti? The same story of Cuba? Dominica? Didn't Donald Trump just take all the oil from the Venezuelans? We have all this wealth, all these natural resources, but yet we can't, have access to it for ourselves. There's a scripture that talks about there will be no might in our hands. Let me see if I could pull that up really quick. No might in our hands. I believe that's in Deuteronomy 28. You go to Deuteronomy 28 and verse 32, it says, "Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long." You know what's so heavy, Indigenous man, about that scripture? And this is for, all the brothers and sisters living on the reserves. This is for all the blacks and Hispanics living in ghettos and barrios. Is that your sons and daughters were literally given to another people. You were sold on an auction block and taken to some slave owner across the goddamn country where you would never see your children again. There's a story of Indigenous people inside of Canada where every time the doorbell rings on a reserve, it was code for the children to go run and hide. Go ask an Indigenous man or woman living on a reserve. They'll tell you about their childhood growing up on a reserve inside of Canada. The doorbell rings, the child runs and hides. Why? Because their sons and daughters were given to another people. Their sons and daughters were put inside of residential schools, inside of boarding schools. And they had to learn to come up with a system to protect their children. Could you imagine every time the doorbell rings at your house that you go run and hide under a bed on a reserve? That's the reality of our people. They do that to this day, 2026, because that's what they were taught to do by their grandparents, by their mother, by their father, because the Canadian government would come and kidnap the children. They would kidnap the children and put them into a foster home. They would kidnap the children and put them in a reserve or a boarding school, a residential school where they would never see their children again. Deuteronomy 28:32 says, "Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people." Blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous, we all went through that same thing. "And thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long." There's a museum of a residential school in Canada just across the border of Niagara Falls in Buffalo. And inside of that museum, there's a white chair that sits under a window. And that window and that chair, a child would sit on that chair and stare out the window looking for their parents. Parents are longing for their children. Children are longing to see their parents. This happened to all of us. It says, "And there shall be no might in thine hand," meaning you have no defense against your oppressor. You have no defense against the man stealing your children. You have no defense against these people who are our enemies, who have constantly abused us throughout the planet Earth. No might in our hands. This is how they're able to come on our reserve, come in the ghetto, come in the barrio, and take whatever it is they want. This sister is giving her, story of what it was like growing up on this reserve inside of Canada. We are all the same people. We better wake up and realize that.
The Hudson's Bay Company and missionaries
Let me refresh this and play it one more time.
Langsmith engine has been quite helpful in streamlining the enormous amount of trace.
Wachik atapus kitnduschin shakots kat no apaska kitskate ban machus kitkashit shihiahapan. The place was originally called Kadawapiskat, that means path between rocks, very steepy and very rocky, and it was also very abundant in traditional foods. Interestingly, this area is also rich in natural resources, which are now extracted by others. The Hudson's Bay Company
Oh, come on. Having a small technical difficulty.
and missionaries colony established around the turn of the 20th century at the place where the community is now. And by the mid-1960s, a permanent settlement was established.
Like we really better wake up as a people. We really better wake up and understand that these conditions that we live in are the same amongst blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous. You see what I'm saying? This right here, this reserve is a ghetto. It is a ghetto. All the brothers and sisters living on reserves understand that the black man is going through the same thing somewhere in this earth. Let me take this down. Let me share my screen for the next video. Again, if you're watching, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. All right, put those comments in. Shout out Maria. Yahweh Shamar, Thabashim El Shai, sis, the water for tuning in. Shout out Officer 500 Ahabawan. All right, excellent brother out there.
I just want the budget.
Keep putting those comments in. Help build the algorithm. You know what I mean? Help share this class. And let's get into this video.
More evacuations out of an Ontario First Nation after.
Wonder if this is some internet connectivity issues.
More evacuations out of an Ontario First Nation.
Hey, this is a good video that I want to get into because what this video is going to show
after the local water supply in Kasheshawan became contaminated. A state of emergency was declared early.
Here we go. All right, bear with the video just 1 second. It's going to come up.
First Nation after the local water supply in Kasheshawan became contaminated. A state of emergency was declared earlier this month. That's after sewage started to creep into people's homes. And as of Sunday, a few hundred people are still waiting to be.
Now check this out. And this is something that we really have to wake up to. Okay. Let me pull this verse up. This is very important for Blacks and Indigenous to understand this. If you go to the book of Ephesians, let me read this. Ephesians chapter 6. Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 12 says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood." Okay, what is this verse saying? Our problem is not with, each other as family. Like you living on a reserve and you think your enemy is the brother living beside you on that reserve, when that is not your enemy. You see all the crime on the reserves, all the crime in the ghettos, and you think that that's your enemy. When you missing the big picture, Black man, you're missing the big picture, Indigenous man. This is a water treatment facility that the Canadian government built for the goddamn reserve to say, shut up, Indigenous man. We don't want to hear about your water problems on the reserve. And they're going to put 1 million news articles out inside of Canada saying how, oh, we spent all this money and built up this water treatment plant on the reserve. The book of Psalms says the words of this man was smoother than butter. Yet in his heart was drawn swords. That's wisdom, Black man, Hispanic man, Indigenous man. His words were smoother than butter. Yeah, here you go, Indigenous man. Here's a water treatment plant that we build for you. Every national news outlet is going to say, we gave Indigenous $2 million. We built up a water treatment plant. But it will never make the news of what you did to those water treatment plants. I never heard no national news about the sewage pouring and overflowing into these water treatment plants and destroying the water for the reserve. You don't hear about those stories. You see indigenous people fighting construction workers, looking at them like, oh, these must be savages. They're out here fighting just peaceful construction workers trying to build a pipeline through their water for no goddamn reason. That never makes national news. Might see a video of that pop up on social media. His words were smoother than butter. He's contaminating the goddamn water. Your oppressor is destroying the water as we speak that you have to drink.
Blown out. With more this morning on the situation on the ground is Peterson Spence. He's a youth executive director of the Sheshawan Youth Advisory Group. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
What can you tell us about the latest evacuation efforts that are planned for, that happened yesterday and planned for today?
I think we're on basically hold at this point because there's some people that want to go to Cochrane and then go far down south. What do you call that? And we only have a couple of 100 people left in Saskatchewan.
The water was destroyed so badly that the entire reserve had to abandon the reserve and go live somewhere else. Doesn't that remind you of the Haitian migrants leaving Haiti, trying to get in America because of how destroyed their ghetto was? They just want to live. They just want some clean water. They just want some food. They just want some shelter. But what would you do to us as a people? They had, I saw American Border Patrol riding horses, chasing the Haitians off of the ocean shores, saying, get out of our country. Winding them up and tying them up with ropes like it was the Wild West, because the Haitians were an undesirable people inside of America. The Hispanics, all they did was come to America so that they could have some clean water, so that they could have some health care, so that they could live. That's all. That's all the Hispanic man wants to do. But you deport him by thousands and drop him off inside of Haiti. They just signed a treaty in Jamaica. I don't know if they signed it yet or they're about to sign it, of finding a place for all the illegal immigrants to be put inside of Jamaica. Guess what? Jamaicans welcome you. Hispanics are not undesirable to the Jamaican man. Indigenous people are not undesirable to the Jamaican man, and we better wake up and gather together as a people. What these Native Indians are going through in Canada is what every Black, Hispanic, and Indigenous man goes through. Their water was so destroyed by the Canadian government that they had to evacuate their reservation.
What's that like with so much of the nation gone?
We can drop that. I'll get to the next video. There's a brother in the chat who said, reminded me of Flint, Michigan. And that's the point of this history class. Like, we all going through the same thing. You saw that video of that water? That was so disgusting. And that's the water that they drink. I remember when that quote-unquote crisis was going on in Flint, Michigan, you had people from Windsor who were filling up water bottles from their tap water, bringing it across the border to Detroit to sell Flint, Michigan water. That was a hustle for Canadians because of how destroyed the water was in Flint, Michigan. We just taking water out of our tap, bringing it over to Flint, Michigan so that they could get some water. That was a hustle. How do you think that Indigenous people, First Nations people in Canada are living? They are accepting bottled water. They are purchasing bottled water, bringing it to their home so that they can live. It's all the same thing.
Drinking this and it was contaminated with mercury. Just imagine that for a second.
For this First Nation in Northern Ontario, that's a daily concern, and it's been that case for decades. In the 1960s, a pulp mill, dried in chemicals, dumped 9 tons of mercury into a nearby river.
You think the water problem, you know what I mean, on these reserves just comes out of nowhere? You had a factory that dumped over 9 tons of mercury inside of the water supply of this reserve. These aren't all the same reserves. These are different stories, different reserves. You had a company dump 9 tons of mercury inside of the water supply, and this brother shows an example of what the water looks like. This disgusting brown water that they got to drink. Do you know how many lives were lost from drinking this goddamn water?
Toxic legacy that the Wapsimaw Independent Nations and the Grassy Narrows First Nation still live with.
We get comments like, why don't you move? Stop eating the fish.
Now, what is this reserve? What do people tell the indigenous people on the reserve? If the water's so bad, why don't you just leave? Why don't you leave the reserve? Why don't you get off the reserve? Why don't you stop eating the fish inside the water that was destroyed by the mercury that we put inside the water? You look at there's something called the Indian Act, which I believe started around 1860s, just before Canada became a nation. Canada's a very young country. And they signed something called the Indian Act. And the purpose of this Indian Act was to force indigenous people to assimilate into the society of Canada. They wanted indigenous people to lose their identity, to lose their language, to lose their culture, and assimilate into Canadian society. And they made it so bad of living conditions for indigenous people on the reserves that many indigenous people left the reserve. Doesn't that sound familiar? The ghetto is so bad that we like, fuck this ghetto, we got to get out. Think of all the Hispanic brothers saying, fuck this barrio, I got to get out. I'm going to America for a better life. All these Jamaicans, I remember all my family members talking about how great Canada is a place to live. We're going to leave yard and go to Toronto to have some great life. This is the story of every Black, Hispanic, and Indigenous man. Forced assimilation. That's what the Indian Act was all about. We're going to force them into boarding schools. We're going to put them inside of residential schools, beat their culture and language out of them. And once we're done with them, they can go wherever they want. Many Indigenous people would go back to the reserves and be like, I have no connection to this place. They speak in a language I don't understand. I speak English. My language was beaten out of me by some Catholic nun. Now I don't know the language of my ancestors. What's the purpose of me living on this reserve? Inside of that Indian Act, if you went to college or university, the Canadian government would take your Indian status, make it illegal for you to go back on that reserve. You were a sister, an Indigenous sister, went out and married a man outside the reserve, you lost your Indian status. It's called forced assimilation. And it wasn't something that Indigenous people knew would happen to them. That was in some Canadian law somewhere that nobody knew about until it was too late. Our oppressor is the devil. His words are smoother than butter. And all these treaties and laws that he puts to oppress us constantly destroy us, constantly oppress us. He creates situations so that your reserve and your ghetto can never thrive. Look up the story of every ghetto or every Black civilization that was destroyed. Look at Africville inside of Canada. Look at Seneca Village inside the States. Tulsa, Oklahoma, dropping goddamn bombs on our people, destroying our cities. That is called forced assimilation. That is called, like Ezekiel said in Ezekiel 35 and verse 5, that is a perpetual hatred towards the children of Israel. We got to really wake up to these stories. I was reading a verse, let me finish it out, in the book of Ephesians, chapter 6 and verse 12. It says, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. That's your enemy, Black man, Hispanic man, Indigenous man. Your enemy are the dark rulers of this world. Donald Trump, Justin Trudeau, every president that you have ever had that has set policies in place to destroy you. John A. Macdonald, the first president of Canada, said we need to destroy the Indian in the child. We need to destroy the savage, take it out of him so that he can assimilate and learn to be civilized inside of this new country. Think that's any different from any president, any king that has ever ruled over us? That's who our enemy is. That's where our battle is. That's where our fight is, against the dark rulers of this world. Against the goddamn people that dump 9 tons of mercury inside of the reserve.
Get over it. It happened long time ago. Well, it happened.
What do they say? What do they say to us? Get over it. What did this sister say? Get over it. It happened to you a long time ago. How many times as a black man have you heard that phrase? We better wake up, gather together. O nation not desired. Sis, indigenous sister, you are not desired in this place. But the brothers inside of the ISUPK, we love you, sis. We'll remember what Canada did, dumping all that mercury inside of the reserve. We'll talk about it every Monday night in this goddamn class. And let the world know that we love you, sis. Don't forget about how they mistreat us. Fuck all that. How many times as a black man you heard, oh, that shit was in the past. Get over it. Fuck getting over it. We have a national emergency in 2026 of indigenous people abandoning their homes, leaving their reserves. That reserve was down to 100 people left because of how bad it was to live on that reserve. It says in the book of, is that Baruch? I think that's in the book of Baruch. It says, remember the prayers of the dead Israelites. How many people died from drinking this water with mercury in it? How many black people in Flint died because of the water? How many people started getting deformities on their body because of what they were drinking? You don't think that's happening on the reserves? In the barrios? This is happening to us everywhere. There is a full-out assault on blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous right now. Officer, my Ottawa Masha in the building, Yahweh Shimei Shabrakatha. He says the white man is the devil that the Bible speaks of. Brothers on the reserve, listen to that wisdom. The white man is the devil. His words are smoother than butter. He speaks with a forked tongue. Many of your indigenous ancestors, your grandfather, your great-grandfather told you that the white man speaks with a forked tongue. He is a devil, the serpent, right from the beginning in Genesis. Spoke with a forked tongue. We called him a serpent. That's how we speak. Indigenous man, you know how you name your people. You'll give a brother a name, Bear Warrior. Because you're a child of God. You're a descendant of Israel. That's how we speak. Well, we said in Genesis, the white man is a serpent. That's his nature, his character. And that wisdom is going to help us defeat our enemy. Defeat these people who are constantly destroying us. If you left black, Hispanic, and indigenous people alone, we would be just fine. Because everywhere we live is so rich and abundant in resources. Not only that, we have the greatest minds on earth to build any invention, to build any material or whatever it is we need to survive in this place. We don't need to assimilate and leave the ghetto and leave the reserve to go assimilate and live in the white man's society. What we need is to be left the F alone. Stop putting goddamn mercury in our water. Stop building these pipelines through our water systems and destroying our water. Stop putting Planned Parenthood in every goddamn ghetto and barrio and reservation on this earth. Leave our women the F alone. Leave our people the F alone, and we will be just fine.
Over 60 years ago, it did happen long time ago, and justice has never come to my people because today our children are still being born with mercury poisoning.
First Nations community members came to Ottawa with these portraits of loved ones whose death, they say, can be linked to mercury poisoning.
We've lost.
How many people are dying to this day from mercury poisoning? We're going to talk about how this was a long time ago. This shit is happening to us to this day.
So many people, a lot of my peers that have taken their own lives because they did not know that mercury affects the brain. And how it affects the brain is it takes that chemical that you need to be happy.
Community members have been trying to get Prime Minister Mark Carney to visit their community after this.
Step forward, Carney! Come talk to our people!
You want to know what this sister right here is doing? She's out protesting, saying, come talk to my people. Let's go to the, see if I pull it up on my screen. We're going to go to the book of Psalms. Well, Psalms chapter 146. Let me see and pull this up on my screen. We go to the book of Psalms chapter 146. Just get everybody to get there with me. It's the book of Psalms chapter 146. And we'll start at verse 3. It says, put not, let me read this. Psalms 146 and verse 3 says, put not your trust in princes. You know, our people are so destroyed for a lack of knowledge. That's what Hosea said about us. The black man, Hispanic man, and indigenous man in the ghetto, barrio, and reservation, we are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. That sister going up to the goddamn King of Canada at the time. She's going up to the king, to the Prince of Canada, to the ruler of Canada. That Ephesians, that Paul said was the dark ruler of this world. She going up to that man saying, just come talk to us. Our people are dying on the reserve from this mercury. When God said, put not your trust in princes, nor in the Son of a Man, in whom there is no help. Let me tell you something, black man, Hispanic man, indigenous man. Donald Trump is not going to help you. Mark Carney, Justin Trudeau, President Obama, they are not going to help you. What's that saying? The proof is in the pudding. Obama was king of America for 8 years, and your condition is still terrible inside of America. Justin Trudeau was king of Canada for 8 years. He promised by 2021 that there would no longer be any problems for water on the reserves. And that was a lie. When he got in office, there was 100 different reserves with water problems. And when he left, 83 reserves still had a problem. That's why what Marshall said is so heavy. The white man is the devil. Justin Trudeau said it would be fixed, and it was not. When are we going to wake up and see that we can't trust these people for nothing? When are we going to listen to what God said? God said, put not your trust in princes, nor in the son of a man in whom there is no help. Justin Trudeau can't help you. Donald Trump is not going to help you. The Republican Party, it's not going to help you. The Liberal Party, it is not going to help you. Verse 4 says, his breath goeth forth, he returneth to his earth, and that very day his thoughts perish. Justin Trudeau is going to die. And anything he thought in his head is going to perish. Whatever Donald Trump has in his mind that is going to happen on this earth, those thoughts are going to perish. Whatever promise that these different rulers have for us, they are not going to happen. For in man there is no help. Verse 5 says, happy is he that hath the God of Jacob for his help. You know how heavy that is? Do you know how powerful that would be to have the God of Jacob as your help? That's why celebrating the Passover every year is so powerful. That's what Zephaniah was talking about when he said, gather yourselves together, O nation not desired. All the brothers and sisters from the reserve, you need to gather with the blacks and Hispanics. Celebrate the Passover and remember what the God of Jacob did to the Egyptians. The God of Jacob destroyed the Egyptians and took us out of captivity. You want to know the solution for all the boiled water alerts on the reserves to the clean drinking problems in Flint, Michigan? When the God of Jacob destroys our enemies. When the God of Jacob is our help. That's what the Bible says. Happy is he that hath the God of Jacob for his help, whose hope is in the Lord his God. We're people so goddamn destroyed, we don't even know who our God is. You think you're going to pray to white Jesus to protect you from his own people? You praying to a white man to help you from the people that are oppressing you? Those are the people that are oppressing you. You need to pray to the nigger God. You need to pray to the God of Jacob. You need to pray to your God. Because in that God, there is hope for you. You look up, if you were to look up how many people died in the bubonic plague, the Black Plague. What does it say in Revelations chapter 11? You look at Revelations 11, verses 6 to 8. It speaks on the prophets of God who have power to rain to rain fire out of heaven. You remember what Elijah the prophet did? Rain fire out of heaven. Do you understand how much power that is? Do you understand the power that the God of Jacob has when he destroyed every firstborn of the Egyptians? That's power. Revelations 11:6 says that these prophets have the power to let loose the plagues on this earth. You know how powerful these plagues are? Look up how many people died of COVID-19. You want to talk about real power? COVID-19 hit Canada and it shut this place down. Shut this place down. How many millions of people died from COVID-19? Real power is being a prophet, having the ability to rain fire from heaven, having the ability to let plagues loose on this earth. You want to know how you stop white people from terrorizing your reserve and your ghetto? Let loose all the plagues. Look up how many people died from the Black Plague. Shoot, let me pull that up really quick. Let me share my screen. Do a quick AI overview of the Black Plague. It says the Black Plague, also known as the Black Death, is estimated to have caused the deaths of 25 to 50 million people in Europe alone. Ooh-wee. You want to talk about power? Imagine being a prophet, having the ability to let plagues loose on this earth. You had 77 million Native Americans unalived by Europeans. 77 million Native Americans. You had over 99 million so-called African Americans unalived by our oppressor. Imagine you had the power to let loose plagues on the earth. It says some estimates suggest that the total death toll across Eurasia and North Africa could be as high as 75 to 200 million people. $75 to 200 million people were unalived from the Black Plague. That's power. That is a power that would destroy our enemies. That is a different kind of power. That is a different kind of power. That's a power that Blacks, Hispanics, and Indigenous could only dream of having. That's why the ISUPK is such a powerful place, because in here we are raising up priests and prophets of the Lord. How do you get the God of Jacob on your side? You have to obey him. You have to obey your father. You have to provoke your father to fight for you. That is a power that could defeat your enemies. That is a power that could stop these people from consistently terrorizing us inside of our communities. Let me pull up one more verse. Let's go to the book of Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 30 and verse 1. And it says, "Woe to the rebellious children, saith the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me." You know, woe means death and destruction. Death and destruction to the rebellious children. Who are the children of God? Israel. Israel is the Lord's firstborn. Israel is the Lord's children, even his firstborn. The children of the God of Jacob are blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous, the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. And Isaiah said death and destruction to the rebellious children, to the 12 tribes of Israel, saith the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me. You want to know why so many of us are destroyed? The 12 tribes of Israel are destroyed because we take counsel, but not from God, not from our Father. We take counsel from another man that says we should go and protest. We should go and arm ourselves and go protest against this pipeline being built through our clean water supply. We should go and take guns and go to this facility that's dumping tons of mercury inside of our water. What's that group in America? Not fucking around. The NFAC, the Black Panther Party. We're going to take up arms and defend ourselves. This is taking counsel, but not from God. That counsel comes from men. That counsel comes out of the heart of a broken man, the heart of a broken sister. The woman who lost her 14-year-old son to that China man who gunned him down over a goddamn water bottle. I should make drinking water the theme of this history class. You're going to take a 14-year-old's life over a supposed alleged stealing of a water bottle. The 14-year-old didn't even steal the goddamn water, and you still took his life. And because of events like this, you don't know how to act. You don't know what you should do with all this pain, with all this hurt, with all this suffering. And God's telling you right here that you should have took counsel from me. You should have trusted and put your hope in the God of Israel. That's what you should have done. I see those white Russians and white Ukrainians praying to God to destroy the Russians. I see those white Russians praying to God to destroy the Ukrainians. Donald Trump praying to God to destroy his enemies. Why can't blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous pray to the God of Jacob to destroy our enemies? Destroy the people that have destroyed Jamaica. Destroy the people that have destroyed Haiti, Trinidad and Tobago, Cuba, Venezuela, the reserves, the barrios, destroyed Mexico, destroyed Puerto Rico. Why can't we pray to our God to destroy our enemies? Why can't we take counsel of the Most High? It says, "Woe to the rebellious children, saith the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin." What we should never do as a people is look at our condition and say, we need to, what does it say? To cover ourselves with a covering. What does that mean, to cover yourselves with a covering? That means to leave the reserve and go integrate into Canadian society. Leave the reserve and go integrate into American society. Leave the ghetto and go integrate into some rich white neighborhood society. Because when you do that, you cover yourself with a covering, but not of the Lord's Spirit. You're going to a rich neighborhood in America. You're leaving a reserve in Canada to go assimilate and act like your oppressor. What your oppressor wants you to do. They want you to a culture, abandon your identity, abandon the laws, statutes, and commandments, the culture of the nation of Israel, and put on a covering of the other nations. Put a spirit of the other nations, but not the Lord. To white society is not the solution. Leaving the reserve to go live with white people is not the solution. God is saying, take counsel of me. Woe to the rebellious children, saith the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin. You go and assimilate into white society, you are going to start sinning. You get verse 2. Verse 2 says, that walk to go down into Egypt. What is this place called? America, North and South Central America. This place is called Babylon, which is spiritual. Free. It is a place of bondage. Isaiah 30:2 says that walk to go down into Egypt, and have not asked at my mouth to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh. Let me see if we're back. To strength. Okay, looks like we're back, Salakia. So Isaiah 30:2 says that, right? Egypt is that place which is, a place of bondage. America, a place of bondage. And have not asked at my mouth to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh. What is Pharaoh? Pharaoh is just a ruler. What do you read in Psalm? Pharaoh is just a prince, a ruler, somebody who has power over the nation. And to trust in the shadow of Egypt. That's what Blacks, Hispanics, and Indigenous should never do. Never trust in Canada. Never trust in America. Never trust in the shadow of Egypt. This is a place. Do not trust in this place. Verse 3 says, therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be shamed. Go and trust in the president, Justin Trudeau, Mark Carney, trust Obama. You go and trust in these leaders, you go and trust in Pharaoh, that is going to be your shame. And the trust in the shadow, your confusion. Goddamn confused and so goddamn confused and what's going on in our world, in reality. Canada uses okay, forgive me, I believe we're back. Just having some small technical difficulties. So we're reading Isaiah, and he's just breaking down one of the worst things that we could do as a people is to assimilate into white society. That is not the solution. The solution is letting these plagues on the earth destroy our enemy. That was my last point I was saying. The title of the class is Canada has 80 billion liters of water for AI infrastructure that they used last year. 80 billion liters of water just to allow these AI computers run. When it only takes 2 billion liters of water to more than solve all the water problems of the First Nations people inside Canada. You know how disgusting you Canadians are? How disgusting the Canadian government is? You will water a goddamn computer before you give clean water to First Nations people. I got to shout out Masha again. He says, the white man is the devil that the Bible speaks of. Do you know how disgusting you are? 80 billion liters of water that you will spend to make sure that these AI computers run. It takes less than 2 billion liters of water to solve every goddamn problem, every water problem on these reserves. First Nations people would have water for life, for years. 80 billion liters of water? You don't give a damn about the First Nations people. That's why we say the white man is the devil. I don't want to hear that shit about, oh, we gave $1 billion to indigenous people for their water supply. Well, we looked at the damn water supply and you filled it up with mercury. You built your pipelines and you let your fuel leak into our water systems. Our oppressor is the devil. He is a snake. He is a serpent. He'll put 80 billions of water on a goddamn computer before he sends you a water bottle so that you can live. Don't you dare show any love to these bastards. Let me finish out this video. I got an article I want to touch on.
This is what Mark Carney had to say.
I can outlast her. I can out.
Look what he says. This goddamn devil thinks it's a joke. This goddamn devil sitting here laughing. The president of Canada laughing and smiling at your calamity, at your destruction, at the hell that you live in on the reserve. Why the hell would you want to speak to this man? Why the hell would you put your trust in a prince? Don't give a damn that mercury is inside of your water. He'll give water to a goddamn computer before he gives water to you.
I echo the calls of Grassy Narrows that the Prime Minister owes them an official apology for this blatantly disrespectful, and I would add, racist.
You think blatant disrespect and racist that all this comment was? These people hate us. Ezekiel 35:5, they have a perpetual hatred for the children of Israel. You think they batted an eye when they slaughtered over 77 million indigenous people? Don't give a damn that mercury is in your water. And you want an apology from this man?
Disrespectful behavior.
CBC asked the Prime Minister's office about this. They sent us this statement. It reads, the Prime Minister could not hear the protesters clearly, and his staff also engaged immediately with Grassy Narrows. While outside the House of Commons, though.
You're not going to acknowledge that? I'm going to see the chief first. That's okay.
They did come face to face with the Indigenous Services Minister who met with them. Her government introduced new legislation to protect First Nations water, but not necessarily contaminated waters upstream that flow into First Nations, like what happened at Grassy Narrows.
So what did he say? You know what white people will do? Oh, we'll protect the water. We'll protect the water treatment plant. But we're not going to stop the contamination of your water. The white man is the devil. Absolutely. So you can have all the good infrastructure in the world, but we're not going to stop dumping chemicals into your water. Let me see what else I got. For time's sake, let me get this one more article. See how much we can get through it. This is a article from Science Direct. Let's see if I can zoom in a bit. It says, when the environment is destroyed, you're destroyed. Achieving indigenous-led pipeline justice. Indigenous communities in Canada are at high risk of suffering damage from and disproportionately impacted by pipeline spills. You want to know the problem? The real problem why you don't have clean water on reserves is because your oppressor hates you. Your oppressor has always hated you. Your oppressor is allowing spills, continually allowing pipeline spills into your water. It says, historically, their opposition to pipeline development has largely been unsuccessful. All that marching that Indigenous people do, saying stop putting these damn pipelines through our water, it has always been unsuccessful. That's a part of the Indian Act that Canada made, that we can build electricity and pipes and develop businesses wherever we want inside of Canada. That's a part of the treaty that they made with the First Nations people. Doesn't matter where you go. You try to build a community inside of Canada in a land that we decide or allow you to live in, we can build and develop whatever we want through your community. Sounds a lot like gentrification of the ghettos inside of America, the gentrification of Africville, the gentrification of McDougall inside of Windsor, the Black communities inside of BC. Gentrification. It's a funny word for we are going to destroy your community wherever you go, whenever we so choose. Based on socio-legal applied research, including a legal analysis, as well as 20 interviews with Indigenous knowledge keepers in Alberta and Saskatchewan, this article explores Indigenous perspectives surrounding oil and gas pipelines, Indigenous pipeline justice, and specifically what an Indigenous-led pipeline relation would look like. I'm going to jump down for time's sake. It says, introduction. More than 50% of Indigenous communities in reserve areas in Canada are at high risk of pipeline spills. You think this is something that just happened 100 years ago? Something that just happened 50 years ago? This is something happening today. 50% of Indigenous communities on reserves in Canada are at high risk of pipeline spills. Between 2008 and 2017, there have been 12 pipeline spills, predominantly in Alberta and Saskatchewan. One of the most controversial pipeline spills was the July 21st, 2016 Husky Energy Pipeline near Maidstone, Saskatchewan. This spill released nearly 225,000 liters of crude oil into the North Saskatchewan River, impacting Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities downstream who relied on the river for their drinking water source. Has anybody ever heard of the 2016 Husky Energy Pipeline spill? I know I haven't. Not until today. Telling me in 2016, with all the great infrastructure that these Europeans have brought us, you still got oil spilling in 2016? Just randomly spilling inside of a indigenous, people's lake water supply, crude oil, just destroying our drinking water. These people got something coming to them. We're gonna get to Revelations 11. I'm gonna read that after we go through this article. Then we'll end out the class. This spill released nearly 225,000 liters of crude oil into the North Saskatchewan River. Surprise, surprise, it just conveniently impacted indigenous communities downstream who relied on the river for their drinking water source. I'm waiting for that to just randomly happen to the city of Toronto, randomly happen to New York City, Chicago City itself. I want to hear things like this happen to a European's neighborhood. I don't ever hear about these stories. It says, when there is a spill, reserves are disproportionately impacted. I wonder why. It's because we live in the ghettos. What money do you have in the ghetto to combat something like this? It says immediate health impacts of pipelines and their spills are not always appreciated by policymakers in Canada. Jonathan et al. 2019 documents bioaccumulating chemical toxins, increased algae blooms through higher temperature and nutrient loading, all with significant impacts on traditional foods of indigenous people. Ooh, we imagine that. It's destroying the food that indigenous people eat. Often, pipeline literature omits the voice of indigenous people. Although there's some literature on the impact of oil pipeline spills on indigenous drinking water, there is very little research on the impacts of pipeline spills on indigenous communities and their views on pipeline development within this context. I'm going to stop there for time's sake. Our water is being destroyed, not because we're not smart enough to come up with our own water purification system. You would think that, we giving these indigenous people millions and billions of dollars. Why can't they just fix their infrastructure? Why can't these savages, these unintelligent people, come up with a solution to their water? Why are they always begging for handouts? Why can't they come up with their own goddamn system, their solution? Because our oppressor is the devil. Our oppressor is taking our resources so we don't have any business to make money. Destroying all of our natural resources, our source of income. Making it hard for an indigenous man on a reserve to start up a goddamn business. to bring wealth inside of his community. Oh, and we got another pipeline leak. We got 225,000 liters of crude oil going into their clean water. Our oppressor is the devil. I'm going to read this one verse, and then we'll end out the class. We're going to go to the book of Revelations, because this is something I was speaking on earlier. The book of Revelations, chapter 11. I believe it's 11 and starting at verse 6. All right. Let's share my screen. All right. Again, make sure you like, share, subscribe to this class. Pull up this last verse and then we'll end out the class. This is the book of Revelations, chapter 11. Make it a little bigger in verse 6. All right, so everybody can get there with me. Revelations chapter 11 and verse 6 says, "These have power to shut heaven, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy." This is the power that a prophet has. This is the power that the brothers in the ISUPK have. The Black, Hispanic, and Indigenous men that are in this school, that have been trained to be priests and prophets, having the power to shut heaven so that it doesn't rain. Could you imagine that power? Elijah the prophet rained fire out of heaven. That is power. It says, "and have power over waters to turn them to blood." You know what Moses did? The power that the Most High gave to Moses, the power that the God of Jacob has, Moses had the ability to destroy Egypt. It says, "and to smite the earth with all plagues, as often as they will." That is power, Black man, Hispanic man, Indigenous man, to let these plagues loose on this earth. COVID-19 is just a small example of power. You want to stop these devils from oppressing you? You need to have the God of Jacob on your side. You get that power by keeping these laws, statutes, and commandments. Learning how to do that. That's what we do in the ISUPK. Teach you how to take your culture back. Teach you how to hope in the God of Jacob. Teach you how to turn from your sins in the land of your captivity and come back to the Most High God and have him fight for you. Because without the Most High power destroying our enemies, these people will continue to abuse us. All right. So with that said, like, share, subscribe to this class. We'll get with you next Monday, another history class. Check out ISUPK Toronto, ISUPK Windsor, ISUPK Detroit, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and ISUPK is all over. Tune into these classes if you're Black, Hispanic, or Indigenous, because we really need to shake this place up. Everything we've been doing has not worked in this place. It's about time that we gather together as a people and get up out of this hell. All right. Yahweh Shemi Al-Shabrak, a thumb to all the brothers. Yahweh Shemal, a thumb by Shemi Al-Shad to all the sisters. I'm out. Israel Shalom.
Hey, listen, brothers and sisters, man, if you like what you hear, hit the subscribe button, man. Subscribe to this channel. And also, please, go to isubk.com and pay your tithe. Drop me some cash so we can move around this planet like we need to, man, and do the things we need to do.
They're one West. They're one West. They're one West. They're